Hello, everyone. I am Jade, and this is Joe.
Hey, I'm here with my 4 clones.
And today we are going to be starting something a little bit different, and Joe is going to explain that to us. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I'm hoping to kick off our new series on hero overviews. So, what I've noticed is that this is a game with a lot of heroes, and they do honestly a lot of varying things. And it's hard to keep track of what any one hero is doing. And I wanted to take some time where we can kind of go from end to end and just kind of go through everything that a hero does, where what their strengths and weaknesses are, where they're good, what team synergies they have, and what units counter them, and then to cap it all off with a ranking out of 10, not for that ranking to be the only thing people hear, because generally with like a tier list or quick conversations on Discord, all you hear is the ranking. But all of those little pieces before that to really help understand how this unit fits into a team composition.
That makes sense.
um, and of course, if we're doing this, we're going to get started with my favorite unit, arguably the best unit in the game, KoloKola. Um,
Yeah.
so I'm just going to get right into it. I'm hoping these are faster. I have been long-winded in our other videos, and I'm hoping that for once I can not be long-winded, but we'll see.
All right.
Um, so KoloKola is a ranger on Border Council, but more importantly, KoloKola is a limited unit. So hard to get and expensive to build, but I would argue very rewarding.
Yes.
So to give a quick overview of her skills, I'm actually going to start with her passive. This is a ton of text, which eventually most of it really doesn't matter. Um, Basically, this changes her auto attacks into one of two forms. There's a T bullets or lightning bullets, and then there's G bullets or single target bullets. So the lightning bullets hit the entire backline. If the backline is dead, then it will hit a random target. Uh, G bullets will hit the front line, and if the front line is dead, it will hit a random target. So um, G bullets do 300% attack
Hmm.
to every on every attack, as well as giving 40 penetration. Um, and then the T bullets do 150 to the main target and 120% to secondary targets. So at the start of the fight, when there are 3 units on the back line, that's doing 150 to the main and 120 to both of the other 2 targets. Once everyone is dead and once the entire backline is dead, then this is just going to do 150% to a single target. Um, so really, this is what makes Kolo so good: is every single attack is doing 300% damage, or it's doing 150 plus 120 plus another 120.
Yes.
Um, so when someone like Lawrence has a skill that just does like 200% damage or whatever, every single attack from Kolo is doing 300% damage. Um,
Mm-hmm.
just to keep moving. So then I'm going to kind of go in a circle. So the most notable thing with Kolo is her clones. So she actually has a basic ability that generates a clone and her energy skill that generates a clone. Clones have 120% of attributes, so the clones actually do more damage.
Mm-hmm.
They don't carry over all of KoloKola's buffs, so like your mana converters aren't going to get brought over to your clones, and there's probably a few other things along with that. But like in general, if you're just testing a Kolo on her own, when the clone spawns, the clone is going to do more damage than the original Kolo. And to balance that out, they take double damage um, and last 8 seconds. So at the end of that 8 seconds, if they're still alive, they're going to disappear. But you get one clone from her basic ability at the start of the round, and then a reasonable cooldown after that. And then her ultimate summons 3 more. Um, the other thing that her ultimate does is, while the shadow clones from the ultimate are active, the caster cannot be targeted. This
Mm-hmm.
is why Kolo lives forever. Once
Mm-hmm.
she ults, if there is a clone that's still alive, she is effectively immune to single target damage.
Yep. That is very true.
Also, 30 lifesteal, that's fine. Um, like that's good, but what this cannot be targeted once she ults is outrageous. There are
Hmm.
so many battles that are survive until Kolo ults and then chain ults so that Kolo can never take damage. Um,
Yep. Because of
and
her.
then
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
okay, I was gonna move on.
Yeah, go
So
ahead.
okay.
You're fine.
So then her final ability, which also helps keep her alive, is when affected by crowd control, she instead evades it and is untargetable for 2 seconds. Cooldown 12 seconds. So that means every time she's hit by crowd control, she then becomes untargetable and blinks away.
Hmm.
While this is another incredibly useful skill for keeping her alive, and why a lot of times when we talk about other rangers, we talk about them struggling to keep themselves alive, Kolo does not have that problem, um, at least as much as other rangers do. One downside with this ability is that it overwrites not only her other skills and her auto attacks, it also overwrites her energy skill. So
Mm.
if you get hit by crowd control while you're in the middle of casting either your super mass effect or your ultimate cell division, it will cancel that ability. That ability will then on cooldown, and then you'll blink away and you will be solo Colo when you could have had your swarm of two or your swarm of four. um, so that's kind of a downside to this ability, but the upside is that you get to live, which I guess is a reasonable exchange. um, Moving on to the potential, Kolo actually has two extremely relevant potentials. So, the reason I ignored all of the other text for her passive is that once you get up to potential 30, you are guaranteed to get one of those bullets. So, at uh, at potential 30, you have no chance of getting the other type of bullet. So, one potential gives you G bullets all the time, the other potential gives you T bullets all the time. If you're building Colo, you really, really need potential 30 because not only do you get that 100% chance, but also it replaces all magazines, including the initial one. So before this, and if you read all that text on the skill, you'll see that you need to go through your first magazine of 6 bullets first before you get your enhanced bullets. That means you do 6 shots of 100% damage, which is extremely lame when she's otherwise doing 300% damage. Like, it is very easy to like double your net DPS just by hitting potential 30. Like, it is a huge difference. As for which one to pick, the 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 unfortunate answer is it depends. Both are extremely good. I would recommend, if you're not sure, pick G bullets. The reason for that is that this potential gives overall damage, which is just one of the best buff, or one of the best stats to buff in the game, because that's a multiplier at the end of everything else. Where T bullets, what it gives is attack speed, and while attack speed is really good, it scales linearly with all of the other attack speed you get. And as a ranger, you end up getting a lot of attack speed, so that's a little bit less good than it might sound at first blush. The other reason I like G bullets a lot better is the attributes you get for G bullets are crit, and then attack and attack speed is kind of secondary, as well as pen. Where T bullets give you accuracy, even more attack speed, and then like MRes and like less attack. So just from a passive stats perspective, G bullets gives better stats. But T bullets is useful as well, which I will kind of go into when I talk about game modes.
Nice.
I will briefly highlight mana converters. In my mind, there are two different mana converter sets that are good for Colo. One is attack. So this basic attacks gain more attack speed and more damage. As long as you keep attacking, you will keep this at max stack. So you just need to be basic attacking once every 3 seconds. For it to keep stacking. So as long as your cast speed is fast enough and you're not casting too many skills, you'll keep that up. The side effect is skill cooldown plus 100% and attack energy gain minus 30%. The attack energy gain is just to try to counteract the fact that you have 100% increased attack speed. So because of your 100% increased attack speed, this downside is not really a downside. The only real downside is the skill cooldown plus 100%. This only impacts her blink when she's affected by crowd control and her single clone. So basically, what this is saying is she's getting less from her single clone as well as less survivability from her blink, but she's getting 100% increased attack speed, which is insane when you're doing 300% damage per hit.
Yeah.
So for G bullets, I think attack is the best. For T bullets, because you have so much attack speed and that potential, I think stacking 100% attack speed on top of that is just a little overkill. So what I recommend for that is chasing, which is just every third basic attack deals damage in a small AoE near the target. Because you're attacking really fast, this procs really often, doing that AoE damage, and it also just packs a little bit more punch after you've cleared your first three. Um, Chasing is kind of my recommendation for T bullets. Um, People have also talked about dominate as an alternative to chasing. I don't have a set of dominate to test. From what I've heard from other people who've tested it, they found that chasing is in general better. So I recommend chasing for T, and I recommend attack for G. If you can only have one, I would probably stick to chasing, but attack is cooler. So do you want to be cool or do you want to be efficient? That's up to you.
I see.
So I'm gonna we'll move on to strengths and weaknesses. Just in my opinion, and as far as I've seen, KoloKola has the best DPS in the entire game. I think we'll kind of go into the weaknesses why that might not be always true, but um, let her on her own and let her keep shooting and building up all of her clones, and I believe her DPS is the highest in the game. She has built-in survivability, which is pretty unique among rangers. A lot of rangers really struggle to keep themselves alive on their own.
Hmm.
And with T bullets, she can deliberately target the backline, which for PvP is extremely important.
Yes.
On the other hand, for weaknesses, her survivability is based on being untargetable. That means that any damage that is AoE based or targets the whole map will still hit her. As I mentioned when talking about ninjutsu, um, her skill animations are interruptible. So if you interrupt her skill animations and she loses her clones, your DPS just got cut by a factor of four, and that's a huge deal. Like, I
Hmm.
mean, it's hard to kind of come back from that kind of loss. There's a lot of times where fights will be extremely frustrating because, like, oh well, this time something happened and my ult didn't go off, so now I have no damage and now I lose and I need to either reset or I lost that PvP fight.
Hmm.
Kolo can be a very swingy character in that way, where if your skills don't go off, you just do nothing and you get annihilated.
True.
Um, Relevant game modes is genuinely every single game mode because she has the best or one of the best damages in the game. You want her in Journey because she has extremely high survivability and she just has an extremely high amount of damage. Faction Tower, I think you would be hard pressed to use anyone else over her in Faction Tower. For Abyss, you want to use her and you want to use her on the boss stages. Um, and similarly with Expedition. And then in PvP, you really want her, but you do want her in T bullets so that you're hitting the backline. There's Kolo can be an extremely risky unit in PvP with G bullets because you're forced to target both frontline units, and if they have an Ana or a Cayuga in the back, where the unit in the front eventually goes invincible, she's just going to waste all of her shots. And that first 15-20 seconds of the fight are extremely crucial. um, and if you can sweep the backline in that time, then like basically the fight is yours.
Hmm.
As far as team synergy goes, I would say the main synergy that people talk about with her is Corellia, and the reason they talk about that is because Corellia's final skill gives uh, gives 30% HP to all allied rangers, which is a big deal. And then If you have her potential, then she also gives attack and crit to all allied rangers. Um, because T Bullet Kolo does not get crit from her potential, having 15% more crit, or 20 if you're at P40, is kind of a big deal for T Bullet specifically. For G Bullets, that the extra crit matters a lot less. Like maybe it's to punch through other enemy units' tenacity, but other than that, like you're almost overcapping crit at that point. But the 30% HP is really beneficial to just add an extra layer of survivability. The other kind of named synergy is Amara, who gets increased attack every time a council hero dies or a council summon dies. And when that 8-second timer runs out for Kolo summons, that counts as a summon dying. So Kolo is honestly the best way to stack up Amara's passive. Um, the other team synergy is with debuffers because Kolo is just damage. If you have an Anna drop down her debuff that increases damage taken by 50%, that Anna is now doing 50% of the damage that Kolo is doing. So like that is like what you do to really take her to the next level is you pair her with a debuffer. And then the other thing is tanks. Because being interrupted can shut your damage completely off. Having a tank in front that will like kind of hold the line and keep enemies from getting through is extremely important. So Higomi or Molly or even Elena, someone who is a tank that's going to soak up a bunch of damage and not let their frontliners who might be a little bit more disruptive, not let them get into Kolo's face.
Mm-hmm.
On the other side, as far as who counters KoloKola. Uh, the big thing is AoE damage dealers. So Skogul is a big one because not only is Skogul extremely strong against physical damage dealers, which Kolo is, but also she does AoE. So her alt and her spear dash will hit Kolo even when she's untargetable. So that's a big deal. Yorimasa is the other one. You put a Yorimasa in the backline versus T Bullet Kolo, and all of a sudden you can't sweep the backline because Yurimatsu is going to go invincible, turn into his other form, and Black Tornado, and that Black Tornado just melts Kolo. It's AoE, so the untargetability doesn't matter, and that can just take you from full health to zero uh, because the because Yori's a draconic unit, he
Mm-hmm.
also gets 25% more damage. Um, the last counter is like kind of the hardest counter of the pack, which is Goal, which has an ability which reflects projectiles back at the shooter. So if Goal puts that up and you're firing projectiles, all you're doing is reflecting them back and damaging yourself. Um, Thankfully, that doesn't happen a lot, but that is definitely the like the biggest counter, and the one that you really want to avoid is gold because you're going to kill your own team before you kill them. So the last thing to do, which is probably not a surprise given how I've talking all this time, is to give a rating. And for me, KoloKola is a 10 out of 10. I think KoloKola is the metric which every single limited DPS unit has to measure against. So if a new limited DPS unit comes out and they do less damage than Kolo, I would have a hard time justifying pulling for them just because limited units are so hard to get and they're so hard to build.
I also would give Kolo a 10 out of 10 rating, and that's pretty much, I think, all we have to say on her. If you have any
Yeah,
questions, feel free to throw some comments as usual.
thank you. And let us know if there are specific units you want us to go through, or if you have other things you'd like us to cover.
Yeah,
Please let us know. We're always interested in more feedback.
for sure. Always interested. Well, anyways, thanks for watching, and we will see you all later.